That was annoying today, wasn't it? All right. Okay. Get in here. All right. Enough. Sit down. Welcome to the Road to Concord. I'm your professor slash host, Joe Bakanovic. Professor is not my self-appointed title. If you don't like that, take it up with Aaron Spikes. He's in the classroom. He gave me the title, not me. You're watching us on Freedom Networks, networks with an X, networx.com, upper left-hand corner, FNTV. Click it, you'll see the live feed. That's our Twitch feed. You can find us on Twitch. Just look for Freedom Networks with the X. Also, live cast on Rumble under the Road to Concord. We'll get back to that. And on Facebook. Two places on Facebook, Freedom Networks, naturally, duh. But you can also find us on Freedom with Steve Nichols, which is our owner's show. Comes on immediately preceding mine. Today was guest hosted by our co-owner, Larry Godwin, I think. I should know that, shouldn't I? If you want me to remember names, you're barking up the wrong tree. Give me a 16-digit number. I'll remember it forever. Names? I barely know my own name. Phone number is 229-469-0335. Phone is open. At least it says it is. Joe at theroadtoconcord.com is the email. I have a couple today to cover. Again, Road to Concord is also up on Rumble. I'm trying to get this show over there and build an audience there as well, namely because I am the most likely member of Freedom Networks to get canceled or get the network canceled because I refuse to behave according to the dictates of the spirit of the age. And I get myself in trouble all the time with the things I say and the way I say them. I also upload this show, The Road to Concord, onto our podcasts. You can find me on Podbean, BEAN, also iHeart and Spotify under The Road to Concord. So, and the blog page, roadtoconcord.com, supports the show. Supports the blog page, soon to be better integrated. Anyhow, told you I'd get back to Rumble. We have several members that have been telling me they have trouble with Rumble, with the comment sections. They're not able to comment. I'm aware of this. We had that problem with several of our, like Bonnie, Sharky's better half. She's now on Rumble. She's able to comment. We had one of our listeners send me an email. I don't have his permission to share that in general yet. I shared it with Bonnie because he told me I could. Hopefully Monday I'll have his permission to share that. I'll email him today and ask. But he had the solution to that. And I don't know if that's what helped Bonnie do it, but seems to be a fix. The problem mostly appears to be with phone app. Rumble's not the most friendly with your phone, but that's, hey, guys, we live in a world of different technologies. If you stick with the one that's easiest, there's a reason that the cheese is free. I'll let you go wherever you want to go with that. But it's true. Don't forget that. The cheese is easy and free for a reason. Snap! You getting it? Yeah, all right. Told you I had a couple of emails. Let's hit these right off. Normally I would handle these on Ask Joe Anything Friday. I think I'm going to hold these. I got one from Sharky, and he's asking me about the IRS and all the agents they're adding and what I think that's all about. I'm going to probably push that to Monday, Sharky, because I'm going to line this up with some stories that I've saved over the years that I think will go hand in hand with your question. Then I received two friendly, cordial, civil emails from John Ford. Mr. Ford is asking me to, in more detail, cover some things about my belief in God and proof that he exists, and et cetera, and why I seem to think, or his perception is that I seem to think everybody has to agree with my belief, or I don't like them, or whatever, or I have a negative opinion with them, or he seems to think I'm trying to force my beliefs on him. Mr. Ford, I know you said you'd be listening today. If you're here in the audience with us, I just want to let you know that I am actually going to take your letter and hold it to next Wednesday, your two emails, and I'm going to make it the subject of the first half of the show next Wednesday on Worship Wednesday, so that I can address it in much more detail. because it's deserving of a lengthy, thought out, well articulated answer, reply. So, Mr. Ford, hopefully you'll be able to make that. If not, we'll be easily able to archive and pin that show for you so I can share it to you quickly and easily should you happen to miss it. But like I said, I think your emails eh, they were very cordial, very civil. I appreciate that. Thank you. And I think that they are deserving of a much more involved and in-depth reply than what I might be able to do today. So we will make your questions the highlight of the first hour of Worship Wednesday um, next week. Let's see, 19, 16, yeah, one more week to go before the break. So that's how we're going to handle all of that. A little bit of housekeeping real quick before we get into class today. Today is Founding Fathers Friday. If we have extra time, we'll roll into some fallacies, do some review. But next week, I'm hoping to talk to Steve, Steve and Larry, or at least Steve this weekend, if I can nail him down when he's got more than a few seconds to talk. I got some questions I got to get answered, some requests. But next week, all week long, we're going to have probably at the top of each hour a little blurb about some of the changes that are coming for my show. So next Friday, a week from today, will be the last show for 2023. I mean 2022. Excuse me, 2022. That'll be my last show. That'll be my New Year's let's hope for better times show. When you come back, January 2nd, that Monday, I'll hopefully have managed to make the changes I'll be talking about all next week. But we'll keep you informed. Should anything ever go weird and you're like, where the heck Joe go? I mean, if you're one of those insane asylum individuals that actually likes watching me, you'll always be able to find out what's going on the roadtoconcord.com, the blog page. That's mine. I own it. So unless WordPress wants to give me what I now say it's worth, they're going to have to uphold their contract and keep that blog page up. No matter what I say, because I'm not going to violate their terms. I've read them. Okay, time for the show today. Dum, dum, dum. Founders Friday. Yes, I see. Ahoy, she's there. Real quick, before we get going, disclaimer, crediting everybody, blah, blah, blah. Try to keep myself out of any and all legal trouble or just plain decency here. Unless otherwise noted, all the bios I use in this presentation came off of the online web page for the Encyclopedia Britannica. So I've credited them. It's a public page. I'm assuming that I can use them. They didn't tell me I couldn't in any of the things I read. All the pictures I'm using are taken from the open forum found through searching images on Firefox using DuckDuckGo. I didn't see any copyright illustrations or warnings on any of those pictures. So just so that you know. And then my little note down here, no infringements are intended by any of my use of this material. It's strictly for public educational purposes. All credits are hereby duly noted and recognized. I don't want to take credit for anybody else's work, folks. I didn't do it. I don't need to do it. I let them do it. I'm not after anybody making a cult or following of Joe. I'm just here to help teach history. All right. So let me see if I can slow my butt down. We are going to introduce ourselves to some of the more important but lesser known people that our founding fathers referenced, read, consulted when they were working out what they want, their formula for this country, what they wanted to do, how they wanted to do things. So they were gathering up all sorts of the wisdom through the ages, intentionally. They said so. It's in their writings. They left it for us. This is one of those men. In fact, he's one of the most quoted. I think he's third or fourth most quoted source. First is the Bible. Second is the last man we'll talk about today. This Mr. Cicero here, Marcus Tullius Cicero, might have been third or fourth. There's a reason for that. He comes up with almost an identical natural law theory as John Locke's. John Locke pulls it from the book of Romans, the Bible. Mr. Cicero pulls it from looking at nature, the same way Job did this. Another Bible book, but Mr. Cicero was a follower of Roman gods, not the Bible gods. And lo and behold, he comes up with just about the same ideas as Mr. Locke. Strange, huh? So Cicero, his full name Marcus Tullius Cicero. He's born in 106 BCE, before Common Era, and he dies in 43 BCE. He's a Roman statesman, a lawyer, a scholar, and a writer who vainly tried to uphold Republican principles in the final civil wars that destroyed the Roman Republic. His writings include the books of rhetoric, oration, philosophical and political treatises, and letters. He is remembered in modern times as the greatest Roman orator and the innovator of what became known as Ciceronian rhetoric. I just pulled some of his quotes out of my records. Just wanted to share them with you so you get an idea of the man, how he thought, what our founding fathers were reading, watching, considering, consulting, and bringing into their work. We have this: the more laws, the less justice. Gee, I'll let you marinate on that one for yourself. Then he says, wise men are instructed by reason, men of less understanding by experience, the most ignorant by necessity, the beasts by nature. Hmm. Do you remember our conversations about those people in this world who refuse to live on a higher plane, intellectually, mentally, learn to think for themselves? They just live by instinct? Wow. Now I got that out of the Bible. Second Peter chapter 2, verse 10 is where you're going to find it. Mr. Cicero looks at nature and he says, wise men are going to live by reason. Men of lesser understanding are going to live when they put their hand in the fire, go, oh, that was hot. A reasoning man didn't have to do that because he could look and say, hey, man, that thing consumes everything. Fire's got to be hot. I'm not going to touch it. The lesser understanding, he had to try it. The beasts, the people who are totally ignorant, the animals eat them. And that's basically what he's saying. Exactly what we covered. Gee, I wonder where I got my ideas from. When you have no basis for argument, abuse the plaintiff. Excuse me. Calling Mr. Zinker and Mr. Harkey. This, folks, is against the man, or ad hominem. Basically, when you've lost the argument, insult the guy that just whooped your butt. That's all you got left. Fallacy. To be ignorant of what happened before you were born is to live the life of a child forever. Hence, we're doing history classes on this show. It's one of the primary functions of the Road to Concord is to teach history. We don't want to live the life of a child forever. At least I don't. I don't know about others. Do not hold the delusion that your advancement is accomplished by crushing others. Or don't think that you get ahead on the backs of the people you trampled down to get there. Where's he live at the time he's writing all this? The end of the Roman Empire when things are falling apart? The recovery of freedom is so splendid a thing that we must not shun even death when seeking to recover it. Freedom's worth more than your life or getting it back. You're going to find that I threw a couple of quotes in here today for you guys. Well, for some of you, that if you pick them up, as I lay them down, they're going to be like little breadcrumbs throughout the day, throughout this show, little crumb here, little crumb there. If you're paying attention, you're going to see the crumbs that a lot of us have been looking for. Okay. Mr. Cicero also says, a bureaucrat is the most despicable of men, though he is needed as vultures are needed, but one hardly admires vultures whom bureaucrats so strangely resemble. I have yet to meet a bureaucrat who was not petty, dull, almost witless, crafty, or stupid, an oppressor or a thief, a holder of little authority in which he delights, as a boy delights in possessing a vicious dog. Who can trust such creatures? And yet, that's what Woodrow Wilson said is the best way to rule the world, is with men such as the ones that Mr. Cicero just described. So they're petty, they're tyrants, they're bullies, they're vultures. Necessary to clean up messes, but who can trust them? Man, where did our founding fathers get the idea that government is a flame and a destroying fire that needs to be chained down. I wonder. Mr. Cicero says, a nation can survive its fools. Biden. And to some extent, Trump. And even the ambitious. Well, there's your Mr. Trump. But it cannot survive treason from within. There's Obama and the people with their hands up his butt. An enemy at the gate is less formidable, for he is known and carries his banner openly. But the traitor moves amongst those within the gate freely, his sly whispers rustling through all the alleys, heard in the very halls of government itself. For the traitor appears not as a traitor. He speaks in accents familiar to his victims, and he wears their face in their arguments. He appeals to the baseness that lies deep in the hearts of all men. He rots the soul of a nation. He works secretly and unknown in the night to undermine the pillars of this society. Oh, let's see what Mr. Zinker has. Jimmy, are you there? Jimmy. Uh-oh. We tried to have a call. The phone line did not want to work. Let me see. It says it's supposed to work. We've had this problem before. We're going to get out of it, Jimmy, and I'll try to bring it back in just a minute. Y'all give me just a second here. I'm going to have to deal with computer programs while we talk today. It's not exactly my favorite hobby, but we're working on it. Mr. Cicero is finishing up. He says, he appeals to the baseness that lies deep in the heart of all men. He rots the soul of a nation. He works secretly and unknown in the night to undermine the pillars of the city. He infects the body politic so that it can no longer resist. A murderer is less to fear. The traitor is the plague. And Mr. Cicero is basically talking about the bulk of the people we call our deep state, as well as all of their buddies. The media, Hollywood, entertainment, music. Let's try this one more time, folks. Jimmy, are you there this time?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep, we got you. Sorry about that. The
Okay.
program had to be rebooted. I apologize.
All right, yeah, I could hear you, but you couldn't hear me.
All right, we're good. You're on the air. What's up?
All right, I'll be quick. I hope I don't spoil anything you've got planned for later in the show or mess up your train of thought.
No,
but on
go
the
for it.
subject of Cicero, I highly recommend that everyone cover his final writings. There were, I think, 14 oratories where he was attacking Antony, who had murdered
Caesar.
Julius. And in those oratories, and I apologize for not knowing the name of them, but I'm having a mental block as you answered the phone. But if you read those oratories on the situation that Rome had at the time in their government, we are a spitting image of it today.
Yes, we are.
And for his trouble, what Cicero got was tracked down and beheaded by the henchmen of Antony. In other words, he was murdered by the Roman government, whom he was criticizing.
Gee, just like getting canceled today.
Sir?
Just like being canceled today when you criticize the government. It's a modern form.
Yeah, but boy, these guys took cancel to a whole new level.
Yes.
A professor of philosophy explained to me about Cicero. He was beheaded, and they put his head on public display in Rome with his tongue protruding from his mouth, pierced through with a gold pin to hold it in place. Mm-hmm. And above it, it read, "The golden tongue of Rome has been silenced by our golden pen of power."
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to leave you with this. Cicero was murdered in 43 BC, I believe it was.
Yes, sir.
So we're 2,040, 50, 60 some odd years later, I guess. You can correct my math.
Yep.
But today, Rome is dead. Antony is remembered for the bloody tyrant that he was, and Cicero lives on in the vein and blood of the United States of America and our founding principles.
What remains of the United States of America as the founders founded it.
In our founding principles, yes. Not today's country.
Yep.
United States has been through at least 3 morphs that I can identify in my studies. You have Thomas Jefferson and James Madison of America. And before that,
then there's Lincoln's, and then there's Wilson's. Yep,
and then Lincoln's America and Woodrow Wilson's America.
Yep.
But anyway, just God, I wish I could remember what those were called.
Jimmy, we will do a dedicated show on the things that you're talking about right now. It's important.
All right.
We're
Yes,
just
sir.
wetting the whistle and priming everything for late in future times.
Yes, sir. And in the future, you need to remember when you say calling Jimmy Zinker, you need to have that phone ready.
I thought I did. It said it was ready earlier. I tested it before the show. Hey, it's a program, Jimmy.
Hey, a former mayor of Valdosta, Georgia, found out the hard way that calling me out on the air.
I wasn't calling you out. I was just
It
catching your
does.
attention.
No, I know that yours was not in a negative light. His was.
Yeah, but I was just calling your attention. I knew you were going to,
Yep.
Cicero's one of your boys, man. I wanted to let you know we were going
Yes,
there.
sir.
All right.
And I do appreciate it.
Not a
I
problem.
love this guy. Love his work.
I'm going to introduce you to some people toward the end of the show that you may not have heard about yet. You're going to like them too.
Yep, there are plenty of them.
All right, man. Let me let you get,
Yes,
and
sir.
we'll get back at it.
All right, buddy. Take care.
Yeah, Jimmy is correct, folks. This is why I wanted to introduce you to Cicero. Here's a couple more. This is Cicero. There is a true law, a right reason. Where have you heard that comment before? Right reasoning, or that concept. There is a true law, a right reason, conformable to nature, universal, unchangeable, eternal, whose commands urge us to duty and whose prohibitions restrain us from evil. Folks, that's the Bible right there from a man who doesn't believe in the Bible. Might not have even heard about it. I mean, he knew about the Jewish Bible that's not. That right there is John Locke in a nutshell. That's the founding fathers. That's universal morality. That right there is natural law in one sentence. And look what it gives you. There's a correct way to do that. That's what he means by right reason. It conforms to nature. It imposes duty. And it restricts and restrains evil, all in the same time. Cicero also says, true law is right reason in agreement with nature. It is of universal application, unchanging and everlasting. It summons to duty by its commands and averts from wrongdoing by its prohibitions. It is a sin to try to alter this law, nor is it allowable to repeal any part of it, and it is impossible to abolish it entirely. We cannot be freed from its obligations by Senate or people, and we need not look outside ourselves for the expounder or interpreter of it. And there will not be different laws at Rome and at Athens, or different laws now and in the future, but one eternal and unchangeable law will be valid for all nations and at all times, and there will be one master and ruler, that is God, over us all, for he is the author of this law, its promulgator, and its enforcing judge. Whoever is disobedient is fleeing from himself and denying his human nature, and by reason of this very fact, he will suffer the worst punishment. This, folks, is Sir William Blackstone. Thousands of years before William lived, citing something that William's going to get from his Bible, and this man doesn't read the Bible. Mr. Ford, you asked me to give you indications that the God of the Bible is real. The book of Romans tells you that all you need to do is look at the world around you and you will land on God's ways of teaching, the biblical God's ways. Mr. Cicero just told you that. Let it sink in, folks. Well, Joe, you're preaching at us again. No, I'm telling you that men who had nothing to do with the Judeo-Christian ethic arrived at the exact same principles. This passage I just read you has Mr. Cicero and Mr. Locke sitting on the same bench in the same section of the same ballpark. And the founding fathers read this, read Locke, read a few other men. They all agreed. Founding fathers said, yep, that's got to be the way to go. That right there is your Declaration of Independence, folks. That's your compass. Charles de Montesquieu. I left one too many U's in there. Sorry about that. I misspelled it. In full, Charles Louis de Segadant, Baron Labrede et de Montesquieu. Whatever. French political philosopher whose principal work, The Spirit of the Laws, was a major contribution to political theory. I've got his book at home. It's about that thick. He was born in January of 1689 and he died February 10th, 1755. If you're reading our founding fathers to any depth, you will find where they cite this man from time to time. Here's some of what he had to say. Anyone who stops learning is old, whether at 20 or 80. Anyone who keeps learning stays young. The greatest thing in life is to keep your mind young. We must have constantly present in our minds the difference between independence and liberty. Liberty is a right of doing whatever the laws permit. If a citizen could do what they forbid, he would no longer be possessed of liberty. Let me translate that just a little bit. Independence is libertine. That's your libertarian today. I want to be able to do whatever I want to do. I don't need anybody telling me what I can and can't do. Liberty is the law, according to how Cicero wrote it, in agreement with nature, which provides a duty for you and I to uphold that law and protect each other, and binds us to collectively punish the bad guy. That's what Montesquieu's telling us. You'll find that in the Founding Fathers' work. As soon as man enters into a state of society, he loses the sense of his weakness. Equality ceases, and then commences the state of war. In other words, we start thinking, hey, because there's a whole bunch of us all bound together, we're bigger and badder than we used to be when it was just us. In other words, we lose our freaking minds. In a state of nature, all men are born equal, but they cannot continue in this equality. Society makes them lose it, and they recover it only by protection of the law. This is if the law is properly written. Remember Cicero. Laws have to be according to right reason in harmony with nature. That's why we did Cicero first. It says countries are well cultivated, not as they are fertile, but as they are free. So if we're reading Montesquieu, he says you're a very well cultivated country as you are a free country, meaning the better your laws, the more your laws are in conformity with right reason in nature, the better your country will be. Not because you have fertile soil, just because you're well cultivated soil. There are three species of government: republican, monarch, and despotic. Or in other words, republican, dictatorial, and tyrannical. It says, if the infancy of societies, the chief of state shape, wait a minute. In the infancy of societies, the chiefs of state shape its institutions. Later, the institutions shape the chiefs of state. Unless, of course, somebody like Woodrow Wilson comes along and says, to heck with what the Constitution says, I'm just going to reinterpret it to mean whatever I want it to mean. Well, hold on to that. That gets addressed here today, too. What it's supposed to mean is that when the Founding Fathers wrote the Constitution, they shaped the country, and after that, the Constitution's supposed to shape your leader, tell your leader what he can and can't do. Folks, in case you're not aware of that, that's another biblical principle. Republics end through luxury, monarchies through poverty. We're a republic. Could we possibly be more luxurious in the way we live? Montesquieu's got our number. The tyranny of a prince in an oligarchy is not so dangerous as the public welfare as the apathy of citizen in a democracy. So wherever you have a vote and you go to sleep and you don't care and you think you got nothing I can do about it. Yep, you're worse than the tyrant. It is not the young people that degenerate. They are not spoiled to those of mature age are already sunk into the corruption. What he just said there is, baby boomers, what's going on right now? It's your fault. What? Yes. He lays this right at the feet of the greatest generation. And he's correct. Because you're the ones that went to sleep after the war was over. Your fault. You didn't continue what your parents had built. And then your children got bad because of it. When the legislative and executive powers are united in the same person or in the same body of magistrates, there can be no liberty, because apprehensions may arise lest the same monarch or senate should enact tyrannical laws to execute them in a tyrannical manner. Or, put another way, if you don't have separation of different parts of the government, from the executive, from the legislature, from the judiciary, when they're all bound in one person, then that person or body writes the laws to suit or serve it, not the people. And then the laws become corrupt because they're no longer in line with natural law. There is no greater tyranny than that which is perpetrated under the shield of the law in the name of justice. Or, in another way, from another person, they may tell you they're coming to rule well, but they mean to rule. So, or to put this in our times, social justice means I got to rewrite the laws according to natural law. I got to write those laws outside of natural law, which means it's not justice. Voltaire. I have a love-hate relationship with this man. This man's a true deist. He's not an atheist, but he thinks God made the universe, wound the clock, left it to go, and took off and went parts unknown. Got to go make another bubble universe, and he's the guy running around making all the bubble universes that people are so in vogue with today. But like I said, that does not mean he didn't have true wisdom to an extent. He does. It's a pseudonym. Voltaire is a pseudonym for Francois Marie Arouet. He's born November 21st, 1694 in Paris. He dies May 30th, 1778 in Paris. He's considered one of the greatest of all French writers. Although only a few of his works are still read, he continues to be held in worldwide repute as a courageous crusader against tyranny, bigotry, and cruelty. Through its critical capacity, wit, and satire, Voltaire's work vigorously propagates an ideal of progress to which people of all nations have remained responsive. His long life spanned at least the last years of classicism and the eve of the revolutionary era. And during this age of the transition, his works, activities influenced the direction taken by European civilization. In other words, he's the French Revolution, not the American. And there are problems with that. If you don't know history, you'll understand why I've got a love-hate relationship with this man. But here's some of his thoughts. Those who can make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities. You've heard me quote that. So apparently, like I said, there's some things I love about the man. What is not nature can never be true. Okay, stop. Those who can make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities. What is not nature can never be true. If you're born XX, you're a female, period. Full stop. End of story. If you're running around telling people that you can become a boy, that's an absurdity. What follows next is atrocities. And what he just said is, it can never be true that you can become a boy because you were born female in nature. And vice versa. If you're born XY, you'll be boy. You're no girl. Never. Ever girl. So you cis people, you say must accept now I is girl, you full crap. That's absurdity. Next come atrocity. See, folks, even Dr. Evil gets and understands it. Those are my two favorite lines from Voltaire right there, by the way, if you're wondering. Voltaire says the monster, fanaticism, still exists, and whoever seeks after truth will run the risk of being persecuted. I call the monster Satan. You might call him whatever you want. Some of us call him progressivism, wokeness. Others on the other side seem to think that Republicans and conservatives are the monster. But I don't see Republicans and conservatives running around trying to cancel and shut everybody up. And when I do find people who say, I'm a Republican, I want to shut you down, what I've found is the monster hiding under the camouflage of the Republican Party. Of course, unless suggests the Republican Party is actually the camouflage of the Democratic Party, which is under the camouflage of progressivism, which is under the camouflage of fanaticism, which is under the camouflage of Satan. Da, 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 da. It is dangerous to be right in matters on which the established authorities are wrong. In other words, since the government's telling us now that you have to accept that XX can become XY just because they declare themselves now to be a girl, or a girl declares himself to be a boy, or your child decides that they're a furry rabbit, you got to accept that. Government said so. But if you know better, it's going to be dangerous because they're going to cancel you. Many are destined to reason wrongly, others not to reason at all, and others to persecute those who do reason, period. Uh-huh. Folks, this was written years before our founding. It's 250 years old. This wisdom applies today. I thought we advanced past all these old dead white guys. Apparently, that's another one of those lies that we're being fed. I may not agree with what you say, but to the death I will defend your right to say it. We have a natural right. This guy is a natural law theorist under the vein of Hobbes. Jimmy, this is why Hobbes and I don't get along. We have a natural right to make use of our pens as our tongue at our peril, risk, and hazard. In other words, you have the right to speak, but it might have consequences. It is characteristic of the stringent censorship that they give credibility to the opinions they attack. Or, put another way, when Facebook silences you, it's because you found the truth and they don't want anybody else to hear it. In general, the art of government consists of taking as much money as possible from one party of the citizens to give to another. Is that not the progressive movement? Pay attention. This is why I hate Montesquieu. I mean, not Montesquieu, Voltaire. Excuse me, sorry, Montesquieu. This is why I'm not. This is the hate side of Voltaire. This is Hobbes. This is the French Revolution. The ideal form of government is democracy, tempered with assassinations. He meant it. He wasn't being flippant. It was written as satire, but he meant it. You got to read a lot of his work. You'll see. So long as the people do not care to exercise their freedom, those who wish to tyrannize will do so. For tyrants are active and ardent, and will devote themselves in the name of any number of gods, religions, and otherwise, to put shackles upon sleeping people. Liberty requires ever-present vigilance. The tyranny of the many would be when one body takes over the rights of others and then exercises its power to change the laws in its favor, also known as community organizing, also known as fascism, also known as the government under which you currently live, also known as the tyranny of the masses, aka democracy. All men have equal rights to liberty, to their property, and to the protection of the laws. Let the laws be clear, uniform, and precise. To interpret laws is almost always to corrupt them. Hello, Woodrow Wilson. Liberty is not and cannot be anything but the power doing what you will. Yep, that kind of goes against what we were just told by somebody else. It says that that's called libertinism. Not freedom. See, we got two Frenchmen that don't agree with each other. Gee, golly whiz. Jean-Jacques Rousseau. He was born in 1712, died 1778. He's a contemporary of Voltaire. The founding fathers read him. Rousseau was the least academic of modern pay attention to this bio, folks. Rousseau was the least academic of modern philosophers and in many ways was the most influential. His thought marked the end of the European Enlightenment, the Age of Reason. He's a populist. MAGA, 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 MAGA. He's not grounded in thought-out ideology. Well, let's read the rest of what we have to say from him. He propelled political and ethical thinking into new channels. We got progress. His reforms revolutionized taste, first in music and then in other arts. Hippie generation, counterculture, got to destroy what was. He had a profound impact on the people's way of life. He taught parents to take a new interest in their children and to educate them differently. Hello, John Dewey. He furthered the expressions of emotion rather than the polite restraint in friendship and love. Feels good, do it, over the biblical idea of agape love. Got it. He introduced the cult of religious sentiment among people who had discarded religious dogma. In other words, I shook myself free of the apostate teachings of the Catholic Church. Sorry, Catholics, it's true. And then he says, well, I don't want you to be Protestants either. Here's your happy, happy, feel good religion that is so prevalent today. He opened the people's eyes to the beauties of nature and made liberty an object of almost universal aspirations. This guy's a progressive, folks. Not that it matters to anybody. The founding fathers did read some of what he wrote, and I've got some of it here for you, for those who care to see. He says, nature never deceives us. It is always we who deceive ourselves. See, now here's the problem. Progressives never see that sometimes they're right. And then they run with it in the entire wrong direction. Oh, look, I got a gem. Let's go this way. Oh, no, that ain't the bank, homie. That's where the thief lives. Oh, well. I prefer liberty with danger to peace with slavery. I agree with that. Liberty is not to be found in any form of government. She is in the heart of the free man. He bears her with him everywhere. I agree with that. The most absolute authority is that which penetrates into a man's innermost being and concerns itself no less with his will than with his actions. Yeah, that's Jefferson saying that the best thing about Jesus was that he drove his law into the heart, purified the heart at the fountainhead right there. Yeah, same thing. Got it. The problem is to find a form of association which will defend and protect with the whole common force the person, goods, and each associate, in which each, while uniting himself with it all, may still obey himself alone and remain as free before. Uh, Let me unpack that. The problem is finding a form of government that protects everybody individually equally, in which case, though, you also still get to do whatever the heck you want. You agree to this form of government, but you still live your own way. He's saying this is the libertarian ideal. The modern libertarian wants to live this form of government. It does not exist. What? It does not exist. This man forgot his quote up above. Nature never deceives us. Nature tells us this doesn't exist, and then he turns around and argues for it. The strongest is never strong enough to be always the master, unless he transforms his strength into right and obedience into duty. So therefore, all I got to do is be the king that's got a big enough gun to tell everybody that from now on, anything I say is correct, and it's your duty to obey blindly. How does that work with anything else this man said? See, he's internally self-contradicting. Sounds good, but he teaches absurdities. There is no subjugation so perfect as that which keeps the appearance of freedom, for in that way one captures volition itself. In other words, put you in a cage where you don't realize you're in a cage. This man is the man Cicero was talking about, speaks the language of liberty and freedom, but he's actually undermining its tenets. This is a modern day progressive. But our founding fathers studied him and even from time to time cite him. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Sir William Blackstone. Oh boy. How many of us know who he is or have ever heard the name? He's born July 10th, 1723 in London. He died February 14th, 1780 in Wallingford, Oxfordshire. He's an English jurist whose commentaries on the laws of England, four-volume work from 1765 to 69, is the best-known description of the doctrines of English law. The work became the basis of university legal education in England and North America. He was knighted in 1770. He is the father of the thinking that most of our founding fathers who were jurists, lawyers, they studied him. He is to England as Joseph Story is to the United States of America and the U.S. Constitution. He is about the highest authority on English common law that there exists. The founders quote him quite often. Let me give you just a few of his quotes. I'm going to save the better stuff for a little bit later, after the break. He says, "The king can do no wrong is a necessary and fundamental principle of the English Constitution." Wait a minute. What? There's that Rousseau dude, and he said the strongest is never strong enough to be always the master unless he transforms his strength into right and obedience into duty. So if I call myself king and I say that I'm divine king, God sent me, I can never be wrong, therefore you must obey me blind. Wow, Mr. Blackstone, I thought Joe just said you're a good guy. He is. He spends most of his life criticizing this. Quick aside, a rabbit, history rabbit. Why do you have the King James Bible? Because King James saw the Geneva Bible of 1599 written by the Protestants that said there's no more divine right kings. You are not perfect. You make mistakes. You're a human. You rule at the liberty and the will, and because God wants you to. I've lost my word. At the pleasure of God. So you're not a divine right king. Quit with that garbage. And it gave all the notes that proved it in that Geneva 1599 Bible. Um, King James says, no, no, heck with that crap. That's illegal. You can't read that Bible. Somebody write me another one. So I'm a Christian. I believe the Bible, but I want you group of scholars, you write me a new Bible. And that's why the King James Bible was written, to go back to allowing him to be a divine right king, so that he can necessarily be the principle that he can never be wrong. Just remember that when you're reading your King James Bible. It was written to make sure that you could still have man gods on earth. I'm not saying it doesn't teach the word of God. The people who translated it did the very best they could with their understanding of Hebrew and the Masoretic texts they had, and the dictate that they had given to them by the king. In fact, I'm amazed at how well they did with the King James Bible, given the fact that had they done any worse, been any truer to the real scriptures, they'd have lost their heads. So, just a quick aside. Now, back to Mr. Blackstone. It says, the public good is in nothing more essentially interested than in the protection of every individual's private rights. In other words, the purpose of government, good government, what is public good, is protecting the private rights of every individual. What Mr. Ford asked a question in the classroom. We need to take a quick stop here. It says, what truth are you saying that labels you a bigot? Please be specific. I think I'm going to need you to be a little bit more specific with your question, please, Mr. Ford. I don't understand what exactly it is you're asking. So if you could make a little bit more of a specific question, we'll get back to you. We will answer it. We will not ignore you. So back to Mr. Blackstone. It is better that 10 guilty persons escape than one innocent suffer. Gee, I wonder where the founding fathers got the idea that it's better that the guilty go free than an innocent be convicted. And lastly, to vindicate these rights, when actually violated and attacked, the subjects of England are entitled, here's one of those breadcrumbs, are entitled, in the first place, to the regular administration and free course of justice in the courts of law. Next, to the right of petitioning the king in parliament for redress of grievances. And lastly, to the right of having and using arms for self-preservation and defense. Do you understand the history of this country? The founding fathers spent 20, almost 30 years asking the king, the courts in England, asking the courts in the first place, the regular administration of free courts of justice in the court of law. They were English citizens. They were asking that the law apply equally to them, and it was being denied. Then they appealed to the king, and the king said no. What did they appeal to last? Force of arms. The Declaration of Independence is an international legal document complaint of the time seeking redress of the colonists' complaints against the king, King George, and they were appealing to the highest authority they knew, the creator of the universe. And for the colonists, that was Yahweh. We have forgotten this. This has been divorced from our social conscience for a reason. Separate the Declaration of Independence from the Constitution. You can interpret the Constitution any number of ways. Tie them back together, and the Declaration will tie down the mischievous of the tyrant. All right, Mr. Ford apparently was talking to Aaron, so I'll let that side conversation go. That one, Aaron can address that, because Aaron can speak for Aaron. All right, got it. That's going on in the Facebook chat if you're looking for it. So this is why the first thing that the progressives did when they tried to take over, they separated the Declaration from the Constitution. It was a necessity. They had to do that. If the Declaration of Independence were still in its rightful place as our founding document of law, holding the weight of law, like our founding fathers said it does, like the Declaration says it does, and like the Constitution says the Declaration does, if all of that was put back in proper play, 95% of our current law would have to be thrown away immediately. It would disappear in a flash of thundering light as being entirely unconstitutional. But we don't do that, do we? We embrace the system we've inherited. Hello, Hobbes. We were written after John Locke, but we now follow Thomas Hobbes, Leviathan. Leviathan was named after the sea monster of the Bible. It was. Not my opinion. Mr. Hobbes's words. Do you guys understand what the Leviathan of the Bible represents? Chaos, nihilism, Satan. Hobbes named his book, his greatest treatise, his greatest defense of natural law, natural rights, and how government's supposed to work. He named it after the literal beast of the book of Revelation. And when you tell me today that none of this stuff applies, you don't see that. I know Mr. Ford's in our audience. He doesn't believe. Okay, fine. Mr. Ford, do you not see how these same concepts and these same principles and ideas echo throughout the halls of human history for thousands of years? Why? If there is, if the world is as I don't want to point at Mr. Ford. Excuse me. My apologies. If those who reject the Bible want us to believe the world works just on happenstance and chance, why do these same ideas continue to echo through the halls of history and time for decades and generations and centuries and eons without changing? These ideas, these principles, these concepts, signs, symbols, thoughts, they're all connected. They're all the same. They do not change in essence. They may change in appearance. The concept, the principle, the thought, that is your ice cream. The way they manifest and appear is the flavor of the ice cream. So Ishtar might look one way when she was first invented. And today she looks almost identical, but not quite the same as the mermaid on the Starbucks cup. Now they don't, individually, well, no, that's not Ishtar or Easter. But when you hold them side by side, you can certainly see this strong resemblance. The people who want me to believe it's all coincidence will just say that. Well, that's a coincidence. Really? I don't believe so. Not after that many years and decades. Here, let me give you another one. It's sitting right behind me. When it was founded, November 10th, 1775, this right here meant the exact same thing as this. The United States Eagle, Globe, and Anchor meant the same thing as that Gadsden snake. They were the same idea. Look, that's an Eagle, Globe, and Anchor. That can't possibly be the same thing as that snake right there, Joe. They're different. No, they are not. This right here is your original Minuteman who carried the drum with that symbol on it. Right here, ice cream. These are just two different flavors. This is why I must look at everything I teach you through a biblical lens. Not because, well, you just decided you put your faith in that sky god and spaghetti. No, because I've studied that book and it tells me that everything I'm going to see in human history is going to look one way. And when I studied human history, lo and behold, exactly what I was told to find right there in front of me. If you write down that XYZ is going to happen today, and 10, 15 years from now, I open it up and, oh my God, XYZ happened. You're a prophet. You could see the future. If you write it down 3, 4,000 years ago and it's still continuing to happen, you're not only a prophet. When it says, I do this so that when it does happen, you'll be able to look back and know that I am God, you're God. It's just right reason to me. Others can disagree. I'm not going to force you to agree with me. And if you're a true follower of the Bible, you won't do that either. Because if you're a disciple of Christ, he taught you preach my message, and then walk on. If they don't accept, leave them be. Let the wheat and the tares grow together. It says he'll handle it, not you, not me. That's part of your answer right there, Mr. Ford. But we'll do that in more depth next week on Worship Wednesday. Coming up on break time, when we come back, we're going to get into the heart and soul of Mr. Blackstone. In your show notes, I put up a couple of links for you. You'll find link to two of my articles on the road to Concord. You might like reading them later after the class is over. Let's take a break. I found myself a colonial soldier's outfit or costume online. I think I got to order that little tri-pointed hat. I got to do Fathers Fridays in full costume, man. I got to do it, dude. I've got to do it. Then, like maybe on Teaching Tuesdays, I can just sit back in a recliner, when we get the full studio and wear shades. Got a crazy teacher. He wears dark glasses. Anyway, back to Mr. William Blackstone. This is from the Blackstone Institute, and it honors Sir William Blackstone, 1723-1780. It says Blackstone was the great 18th century English legal scholar whose philosophy and writings were infused with Judeo-Christian principles. The Ten Commandments are at the heart of Blackstone's philosophy. Blackstone taught that man is created by God and granted fundamental rights by God. Man's laws must be based on God's laws. Our founding fathers referred to Blackstone more than to any other English or American authority. That's true. Him and Locke, they were neck and neck. Blackstone's great work, Commentaries on the Laws of England, was basic to the U.S. Constitution. This work has sold more copies in America than in England and was a basic textbook of America's early lawyers. It was only in the mid 20th century that the American law, being rewritten by the U.S. Supreme Court, repudiated Blackstone. An attack on Blackstone is an attack on the U.S. Constitution and our nation's Judeo-Christian founding. The Blackstone Institute is committed to reviving the Constitution and its Blackstonian foundations. Bring it, baby. Hello, Wilson. Ugh. the saboteur within our gates and everybody that follows after him and his spirit. And I'm sorry, folks, but Wilson got it from Teddy Roosevelt. And Teddy got it from Lincoln. What? Yeah, one of these days when I'm ready to do this, I'll get Jimmy Zinker to come in. We'll talk about Mr. Lincoln. Just another quick rabbit. If your history teachers tell you they're a great president, they're probably one of the worst out there. That's Lincoln and Wilson. Look them up. They're two of the best. If your history teacher poo-poos that president, they're probably one of the best. If they totally erase them, you've got one of the absolute best presidents on your hands, like Mr. Calvin Coolidge. There's a reason he's been erased, because he shows you that everything the progressives do is garbage. He was very much in line with what Trump tried to do for this country. We saw the results of sound policy, at least with the economy. Coolidge showed you how a true constitutionalist walks the walk. And that's why you don't know about him. But FDR, Woodrow Wilson, Lincoln, three worst presidents in the history of this country up until Obama. What? Yes, the ones that are championed are the worst. Progressives, 180-degree rule. Whatever they say is good is bad. Whatever they say is bad is good. It's almost like they work for a certain character I know in this book that I like to read. You know, the red guy with the horns and the pointy tail, even though he actually comes to you looking beautiful, like an angel in a ray of light. 180-degree rule again. Gee, golly, Joe. Where'd you get that rule, Joe? Natural law. All right. Commentaries on the Law of England. This is Mr. Blackstone. This is his words. He wrote this. When the Supreme Being formed the universe and created matter out of nothing, he impressed certain principles upon that matter. When he put that matter into motion, he established certain laws of motion. If we farther advance, he means further, but remember, he's writing 300, 400, 500 years ago. He uses English differently. If we farther advance to vegetable and animal life, we shall find them still governed by laws. The operations of inanimate and organic processes are not left to chance or the will of the creature itself, but are performed in a wondrous, involuntary manner and guided by unerring rules laid down by the Creator. Man, considered as a creature, must necessarily be subject to the laws of his Creator, for he is an entirely dependent being. And consequently, as man depends absolutely upon his Maker for everything, it is necessary that he should, in all points, conform to his Maker's will. This will of his Maker is called the law of nature. He gets this from St. Thomas Aquinas, or however you want to pronounce that word. That's where he gets this. He is thoroughly Christian in his philosophy and thinking. And in the Constitution and nature's God, that's what they're referencing, not the deists. Right there. That's the passage. So when your modern day historian says, well, the founders were deists, and that phrase in the Declaration, that's just talking about the deist God. That ain't got nothing to do with no Bible. Bravo, Sierra. They got it from Sir William Blackstone, who got it from ultimately St. Thomas Aquinas. This is also Blackstone. The doctrines thus delivered we called the revealed or divine law, and they are to be found only in the Holy Scriptures. These precepts are found upon comparison to be really a part of the original law of nature. And then the moral precepts of this law are indeed of the same original with those of the laws of nature. The revealed law is the law of nature expressly declared to be so by God himself. Upon these two foundations, the law of nature and the law of revelation, depend all human laws, the laws of nature and the law of God. Nature and nature's God. Does this not sound like that passage I read for you from Cicero? Cicero didn't read the Bible. How did they both find it at the same place? Many paths to one truth. Understand what I'm telling you or trying to help you see. If the pagan and the devout believer both get to the same place, that's because that's the truth right there where they both got. That's true. Cicero, the pagan, cited God. Theos, Greek word theos. Okay? Look it up. I've read this one in the Greek. I'm a classically trained philosopher. I've read Cicero in Greek. I didn't understand the Greek, but I had a lexicon concordance right next to it. I know that passage. That's why it was given to you. That's why it's highest on my list of Cicero's quotes in his writings. So if the pagan says God wrote all these laws into the laws of nature, and then Sir William Blackstone comes along, says the same thing, says, well, the Bible tells us this, and I open up the book of Romans, and Paul, the apostle to the Gentiles, to the pagan world, says, hey, man, all of the laws are right here. They're revealed laws and natural laws. Revealed is Blackstone, natural Cicero, said they're both there. Those are God, Yahweh's two books of law, chapter 1 and 2 of the books of Romans. And John Locke comes along and says, hey, look, book of Romans tells us the A and the B of this. All three men are now in agreement. You've found capital T truth, and you're all sitting next to each other, side by side, in the same bleacher row, in the same section of the same stadium. That is one of the most powerful proofs that the scriptures are exactly what they claim to be you're ever going to find. Because you had ideological enemies found the same truth. Excuse me, I'll step down off my soapbox. I want to introduce you to one of my best friends, John Locke. He's born August 29th, 1632. He dies October 28th, 1704. Declaration's written in 1776. He's in 17. Been around a while. Time for his work to get to the colonies. Yes. English philosopher whose works lie at the foundation of modern philosophical empiricism and political liberalism. Not progressive liberalism. Not, hear me, not today's idea of liberalism. We got to call it classic liberalism because of Woodrow freaking Wilson. Corrupter of all English words to suit his political agenda that he's going to force down our throats. Just because he knows better, because he's smarter than we are. And when you look at him, he's not that smart to begin with. So, political liberalism, individual rights and liberties, freedom, natural law. He was an inspirer of both the European Enlightenment and the Constitution of the United States. His philosophical thinking was close to that of the founders of modern science, especially Robert Boyle of Boyle's Law, Sir Isaac Newton, the laws of physics, and other members of the Royal Society. His political thought was grounded in the notion of a social contract between citizens and in the importance of toleration, especially in matters of religion. Much of which he advocated in the realm of politics was accepted in England after the Glorious Revolution of 1688 and 89, and in the United States after the country's Declaration of Independence in 1776. Aaron says he thought I was getting down off my soapbox. I'm sorry. This is okay. Let me put it this way. I run into people all the time who try to tell me what is and isn't, or what was and wasn't about the founding of this nation. And I try to educate them. And I mean, truly tell them the truth. And they're like, well, Joe, I've never heard any of that. Yeah, because you're reading historians who are in line with Wilson and Dewey. They've come along generations after all that was done. They were taught lies, so they believe them and they teach you lies. Nobody ever goes back to the original sources. Well, that's my big mistake. I do that. I do that with history. I do that with the Bible. So I find out not perfect, but closer to the truth. And when I try to share it, lo and behold, exactly what Mr. Voltaire told me, people want to kill me because I bring them the truth, which just so happens to be If you follow the capital T truth, this world will hate you. Where have we heard that before? What I'm trying to explain here, and why I'm so passionate about this one, is all of the stuff that is politically, secularly, outside of religion, everything that is destroying this country right now is because we have been fed, have accepted, and now defend lies. And you're about to really see what I mean. I like Thomas Jefferson a lot. I love me some John Locke. Let me share, just to get you introduced. To love truth for truth's sake is the principal part of human perfection in this world and the seed plot of all other virtues. Locke is a devout Christian. He's talking about capital T truth, aka Jesus, Yeshua, HaMessiah, or Mashiach, or whatever, the Messiah. Capital T truth. The virtue is harder to be got than acknowledged of the world, and if lost in a young man, is seldom recovered. This was reworded and is usually quoted by Samuel Adams. Where do you think Sammy Boy got it from? Where do you think Locke got it from? Natural law. Looking at the world, using his little noodle to figure it all out, and putting it down into established principles. New opinions are always suspected and usually opposed without any other reason but because they are not already common. In other words, everybody attacks the new guy or new thought. Government has no other end than the preservation of property. Gee, have you read much Madison? Where do you think Madison got it from? Where there is no law, there is no freedom. Incidentally, if you'll remember, our little French philosopher buddies who said that were writing after Mr. Locke was dead and gone. So where do you think our Frenchmen got it from? Hmm. Freedom of men under government is to have a standing rule to live by, common to every one of that society and made by the legislative power vested in it, and not to be subject to the inconstant, uncertain, arbitrary will of another man. In other words, if your judge reinterprets that law, or he applies it one way to you and another way to another person, that's not freedom. That's not justice. It's not even law. Locke would tell you that's tyranny. In case you haven't noticed, that's how our legal system works these days. They interpret it whatever way they want. And you got a law that's written for one group of people in this country at the exclusion of others. Locke just told you for it to be law, to be liberty and just, freedom, it has to apply to everybody equally. Well, that's exactly what the 14th Amendment says, too. But it's also what the Constitution says, and it's also what the Declaration of Independence says. And yet we just go do whatever the heck we want to do. Kind of like it's the arbitrary rule of man. Wait a minute. Didn't I just read that somewhere? And not to be subject to the inconsistent, uncertain, arbitrary will of another man. Oh, glory be. Joe, you should be telling Locke how to think about this. No, where do you think? Who do you think told Joe how to think about these things? I told you I like this man, John Locke. Think I got all the things in my head out of a vacuum? I'm not that smart. Happy to admit that. I got it from brighter men than me. Mr. Locke's one of them. The power of the legislative being derived from the, oh my gosh, pay attention, please. Eyeballs. If we were in the military, if you were in the military, I'd be saying, eyeballs, snap, everybody, right here, zero. Pay attention. Listen up. The power of the legislative being derived from the people by a positive voluntary grant and institution can be no other than that what the positive grant conveyed, which being only to make laws and not to make legislators, the legislative can have no power to transfer their authority of making laws and place it into other hands. What? Listen, the authority of Congress is derived from the people who made a knowing, conscious decision and agreement to positively tell you, Congress, you are the only ones that can write law. There can be no other grant conveyed here without an amendment to the Constitution. Therefore, Congress and only Congress can write the laws. They cannot say, I'm going to set up a bureaucracy to take over this job for me. That is not allowed. Ergo, everything Woodrow Wilson and his disciples have done in this country since he said, let's set up these bureaucracies, is unconstitutional. Well, Joe, the founding fathers didn't say that. The founding fathers pointed to this man and his philosophy as the groundwork of the United States Constitution. Yes, they did. They expected you to understand right reason and to know how to keep doing it. They just told you that every bureaucracy in this nation is unconstitutional because it was not given to Congress to set those bureaucracies up. They were outside of their constitutional authority to do it to begin with, and they cannot vote themselves a law to do so. We've already read that from another one of the men that the founding fathers studied. Bring the rain, Mr. Locke. Somebody get on the radio and start yelling repeat. If the innocent, honest man must quietly quit all he has for peace' sake, to him who will lay violent hands upon it, I desire it be considered what kind of peace there will be in the world, which constitutes only in violence and rapine, and which is to be maintained only for the benefit of the robbers and the oppressors. Again, what is he saying? If the honest person must sit down and shut up to keep the peace, and therefore hand the world over to tyrants, what kind of peace is it where all the tyrant is going to do is set things up to suit his benefit? Or why is it peace, and what type of peace is it that you and I shut up when we're being ruled by robbers and oppressors just so that we don't have to fight a war? Uh, breadcrumb, breadcrumb. Now be careful. I gave you breadcrumbs, but some of those breadcrumbs tell you there's a way to do this and there's a way not to do this. So if you're hearing what I'm saying, pay attention to what I gave you today. Mr. Locke says, the care, therefore, of every man's soul belongs unto himself, and is to be left unto himself. But what if he neglected the care of his soul? I answer, what if he neglects the care of his health, or of his estate? Which things are nearly related to the government of the magistrate than the other? Will the magistrate provide by an express law that such of one shall not become poor or sick? Laws provide, as much as possible, that goods and health of subjects are being injured by the fraud and violence of others. They do not guard them from the negligence of the ill husbandry of the possessors themselves. Again, let me explain this one for you. He's saying that the government has no business telling you how to live because, well, we've got to pay your health care. No, it doesn't matter. You don't have the authority to be the one who pays for health care. That's outside of the rules of nature and nature's law. You have no authority over that because then you will be mandated to make the positive law that tells you if you're going to live, you must live well. Because if you don't, then the public has a responsibility to have to pay for your health care. And therefore, your ESG says you haven't run enough today, Joe. You got to go run before you can eat or buy or smell anything anymore today. You got to go work out. Locke is saying that's tyranny. Locke is saying that if you and I want to be fat slobs and lazy and out of shape, that's our business. It's not the business of government. And he's saying that every law should protect our right to make up our own minds of how we're going to live. Saying if we want to be poor because we don't manage our money properly, it is not government's job to fix that. It is government's job to make sure the laws apply to each and every one of us equally and that those laws are fairly enforced. It is not government's job to make sure the outcomes will be equal. That is the definition of tyranny. Ergo, each and every one of you out there who have ever encountered somebody who thinks that everyone has to be equal in the outcome, you have come face to face with a tyrant. That's what Locke is saying. And our founders embraced that wholeheartedly because that is in keeping with right reason and natural law. Locke says, "For nothing is to be accounted hostile force, but where it leaves not the remedy of," oh, another breadcrumb, folks. "For nothing is to be accounted hostile force, but where it leaves not the remedy of such an appeal, and is such force alone that puts him that uses it into a state of war and makes it lawful to resist him. A man with a sword in his hand demands my purse in the highway, when perhaps I have not 12 pence in my pocket. This man I may lawfully kill. To another I deliver 100 pounds to hold only whilst I all right, which he refuses to restore to me, when I am got up again, but draws his sword to defend the possession of it by force. If I endeavor to retake it, the mischief this man does me is 100 or possibly 1,000 times more than the other perhaps intended me, whom I killed before he really did me any harm, and yet I might lawfully kill the one and cannot do so much to hurt the other lawfully." Let me unpack this for a minute. He's saying, he's talking about when the use of force is permitted. And he's saying, so a man meets you on the road, pulls a sword, and wants to kill you if you don't give him everything in your pocket. You can kill that man legally by natural law. That's self-defense. But now you come and you give $100 to your neighbor, your friend, or whatever. You say, "Hey, I need to keep my $100 because I got to go somewhere. It's dangerous or whatever. When I come back for it, give it back, please." Well, when you come back to get it, he pulls a sword and says, "No, you can't have it. It's mine now." Locke's saying you don't have the right to kill that man. Why? The reason whereof is plain, because the one using force which threatened my life, I could not have time to appeal to the law to secure it. One is an immediate, imminent threat right here, right now. It's got to be dealt with immediately. And when it was done, when it was gone, it was too late to appeal. So in other words, if you wait for the law, you could be dead. And yet our laws today tell you that you can't deal with that man that's in your house robbing you. You got to wait for the police. That's a violation of natural law. So Mr. Locke says that's okay. If it's an immediate, right now threat, you can do this. But he says the law could not restore life to my dead carcass in this event. So the loss was irreparable, which prevents the law of nature, gives me the right to destroy him. Because man's law, that it can't fix the threat that's going on right then. But he says, but in the other case, my life not being in danger, I may have the benefit of appealing to the law and have reparation for my 100 pounds made that way. This has come up on our show before. When do you have the right to use force? When the threat is deadly and imminent, here, now, in my face, and I do not have time to call the police or to appeal to the judges. So after he's stolen my property and he gets away with it, am I allowed to hunt him down and kill him? No. There's no imminent threat to life. And now I can appeal to the police and to the courts to fix the problem. This is a founding principle of this country that has been taken away from us by our current government, which makes it despotic, which places it in an act of war against each of us. Yes, you and I are in a state of war with the federal government. And in many states, we're at war with our state governments. And thanks to Mr. Bernie Thompson, who is here locally, who does a government watchdog show, a very good one. And if you're looking to get into something, you should look up the Bernie Thompson show on Facebook. He's an excellent example of what you might do locally in your own community. He exposes government corruption at the city council level. And he has shown us that we are at war, at least certain municipalities in our county are at war with their local city governments. And I mean at war, by definition, at war, with all that implies. Mr. Locke continues. He says, any single man must judge for himself whether circumstances warrant obedience or resistance to the commands of the civil magistrate. We are all qualified, entitled, and morally obliged to evaluate the conduct of our rulers. This political judgment, moreover, is not simply or primarily a right, but like self-preservation, a duty to God. As such, it is a judgment that men cannot part with according to the God of nature, It is the first and foremost of our inalienable rights, without which we can preserve no other. In other words, you have a right and a duty to judge whether or not our representatives are doing their job properly and whether or not their laws are lawful. And you do not have the luxury or privilege of remaining silent in that duty. I want to say something else real quick. If you call yourself a Christian and you think you have no place in politics, Mr. Locke just called you a coward and a backslider because he said you have a duty to God to do exactly that. Get involved in the laws that are made in this country and the process by which they are made. And he is 100% correct. You want to know why this nation's in the trouble it's in? Because you people who call yourself Christians will not vote. And when you do, you will not vote according to the principles of the Bible. You vote according to the principles of man, the beast. That's why this nation's in trouble. Right there. The corruption of our great grandparents' generation and the mess we've inherited and refused to correct and fix within ourselves because they allowed us to lose virtue. And now to regain it, it's too much work. And we're too fat, dumb, and happy with our luxurious lifestyles. What do we do, Joe? What do we do, Joe? Revival or bust, folks. Back to Mr. Locke. Whenever the legislators endeavor to take away and destroy the property of the people, or to reduce them to slavery under arbitrary power, they put themselves into a state of war with the people, who are thereupon absolved from any further obedience, and are left to the common refuge which God hath provided for all men against force and violence. Power then devolves to the people, which have or who have a right to resume their original liberty, and by the establishment of a new legislative, such as they think fit, provide for their own safety and security, which is the end for which they are in society. What? The first paragraph of the Declaration of Independence, folks. It's right there. Thomas just reworded it, but it's right there in front of you on your screen. Whenever the lawmakers take away your property, and remember, you have property in your rights. So whenever they take away your rights or your physical property, or they reduce you to slavery through their laws, laws written for their good and not yours, they declare a state of war with you. And you are no longer obliged to follow that government or its laws. And you now go back to the refuge with God provided for all men against the use of violence. You are now the man on the street being confronted with somebody who's got a sword threatening your life right here, right now. You have the natural right of self-defense. It devolves to the people. This power goes back to the people individually. And the people have the right to resume their liberty by establishing a new government however they see fit. That's what he's telling us. That's what Mr. Locke is telling us. We're there. We're there. Now, we still have a few legal means that have not been exhausted. Mr. Blackstone says they must be exhausted first. So maybe next week we have to look at Convention of the States. It's been requested. So I think next Friday we need to focus on that. We're going to have a look at those constitutional means, those legal means that are still available to us that we have not exhausted. If and when we think we're going to revert back to arms to fix the problems we're undergoing, first things first, those legal means must be exhausted. Then you have to have another government appointed in place. And that's going to require something that we are just not going to do anymore. Larry was talking about it on Steve's show earlier today. The Republican Party is going to eat itself because we can't agree whether or not we want MAGA or DeSantis or somebody else. Well, they can't. I'm not a Republican. I am actually registered independent on purpose. But if you can't agree, you're not going to have a party. We're not going to be able to agree because nobody wants to rally around anything other than what they think is right. So we're 5 days away from restoring the country. Uh-huh. 350 million people hear that. 350 million people have their own idea what that means. None of them agree. Where are you going to go? I got 350 million cats. You think I'm going to get them all to go in one direction I need them to go so that I can hold up to what's going to oppose me? Nope. And now you understand why Joe sounds like a pessimist. I'm not a pessimist. I know there's victory in the end. I just happen to know who the general is, and most people don't want to accept him anymore. They're willing to accept him as long as it's easy and free. But as soon as somebody tells you, oh, no, no, wait a minute, not your way, his way. That's where things come to a grinding halt. We ain't going to go there, Joe. Why? Well, because I don't get to be free. What's your definition of free? Get to do whatever I want. That's not what the men the founding fathers consulted said. They're saying that you have to obey the law to be free. Well, yeah, but the laws are corrupt. Yeah, because you allowed corrupt men to get into place and you allowed them to remain there. The men that the founding fathers consulted said, yeah, the laws are what gives you liberty when the laws are in accordance with right reason and the laws of nature. And we read 2 or 3 different men. It said that means they have to be in line with the laws of God. We want to do away with God. You're doing away with any hope of liberty whatsoever. Which means every secular humanist system that they've proposed, communism, fascism, whatever, socialism, whateverism, progressivism, they're going to fail. Capitalism is one of those. Say, Joe, no, stop. That's the fallacy of equivocation. When you and I talk about capitalism today, for most part, we're not talking about capitalism as Joseph Smith wrote about it. You're talking capitalism as you understand it today, which is, if you really want to dig down to it, fascism. Right back to your secular humanism again. It's fascism. You put a different name on it, which is what progressives do, because they think if I get a different word, you won't realize it's still the same old flavor of vomited ice cream. The vomit frog or whatever that you get in Harry Potter world. Oh, but I gave this one a different name. Oh, cool. That's raspberry rainbow unicorn. Tastes like vomit. Yeah, but it can't be because now it's raspberry rainbow unicorn. Different word, whole different thing. Wrong. Form and function define. So modern day capitalism, according to the form and function, is fascism by definition, not the free market, as Joseph Smith explained and described. This is why I try to teach people fallacies. Try to show you that you got to go to your definitions. If you're going to try and figure out something, first thing you need to do is, what the heck are these labels being used to discuss? What's the concept? What is the idea, the thought, the principle behind the word? And then you look it up and you say, well, this is what it's supposed to be. Now, is the thing I'm actually dealing with, does it fit this definition? Modern day capitalism does not fit the definition of the free market as Joseph Smith explained and defined it. Ergo, modern day capitalism isn't capitalism. Like today, liberalism. Does liberalism today stand for individual rights and liberty, the rule of law according to natural law, restricted small government? No, it doesn't. It stands for everybody's going to be equal, government's going to enforce that. Therefore, it's not liberalism. It may call itself liberalism. It's not. It's progressivism. Well, what did Wilson say progressivism is? That's the American word for the scientific way of administrating government that was coming out in Europe, which at the time was socialism and communism. Communism just being another name for socialism. Government as the head of everything. God. Definitions, man. Definitions. Definitions, definitions, definitions. And then context, context, context. You have those two. You learn how to hunt them down, hold them up against some of the fallacies that you're taught, mistakes in thinking and arguing. I've already heard back from a lot of you. Clears things up quick. All this could have been taught to you in one semester in high school, but then you wouldn't do what they tell you to do, because then they would have taught you how to think for yourself. And all of a sudden, you become another cat. So now they got a bunch of cats to herd. How do you get cats to work together toward a common goal, common cause, common goal? You don't. They won't. They'll fight each other, which is exactly what we're doing now. So how did the founding fathers do it, Joe? John Adams tells you, I read that quote all the time. Nobody wants to accept it. The founding fathers rallied around the only thing they could all agree upon, the very basic tenets of the Christian religion. Well, that was just one founding father. He's only called the Atlas of the Revolution. He held the revolution up on his back. You know why you don't know more about him? He told you. I'm going to get Thomas to write this because he's more eloquent. People like him better. I'm a gruff, grumpy, snotty old man. Nobody likes me. The ideas came from John Adams. Thomas Jefferson was just eloquent in the way he stated them. He's not dumb on his own right. He's very brilliant. But if you read more about his biographies, he tends to bounce along with the thought of the day. So he clarifies the zeitgeist. He's just very good at explaining the spirit or the mood of the time he's in. He's taking the work from other men and putting it in better, prettier words. Does not mean he's not a genius in his own right. He is. He wrote a lot on his own. You got to understand what's going on in the past. If you don't, child forever. All right, end of sermon for the day. That's some of the people your founding fathers were looking at. Founding fathers of the United States of America. That's some of the thinking that was consulted in the framing of the Constitution. Hopefully, I introduced you to at least one new person today, or one new thought or idea. Taught you something new, I hope, I pray. I've got some of our old fallacies queued up that I could go over if I want to. I don't know if I want to do that. Phone line is open, 229-469-0335. Jimmy's proof we got it working now. Comment section seems to be at a bit of a breather, but it's available if you want to go that way. If there's anything anybody wants me to hit on, touch. If not, I might pull a Steve on you today. It's Friday, man. Finally, Friday, quack, quack. I got to see if I can get permission to use that song. That'd be a good one to go out with every Friday. It's a weekend. Time for hedonism. 48 hours of hedonism. Let's go. Monday morning. I wonder why the world's in such a mess. I don't know. Maybe because we don't live in line with right reason and natural law? Yeah, Joe, that's a bummer, man. It makes me do things I don't want to do. Welcome to the world of being grown up. What? Growing up. Yeah, that's when I can buy my own Xbox. Yeah, okay. Think I found the problem. Mama should have kicked your Cheeto Ekin button out of the house when you turned 18. Kicked the bird out the nest. Fly! I can't! Boom! Well, you better figure it out because the fox is coming. That's natural law too. If you're going to stay an animal for the rest of your life, then the world's going to eat you. And those who learn to live from a higher level, higher plane, need to have the intestinal fortitude to let the world eat them rather than think you got to save them. Let's see who we have on the phone. Good morning, caller. You're on the road to Concord with Joe.
Good morning, Joe. It's T-Rex. How you doing this morning?
I was doing good until just a minute ago. I kind of depressed myself, T-Rex. Make me feel happier.
The Stay Puft Dinosaur has called.
Dude, I didn't mean anything by that. I was just playing with you. I might have to go back and take my comment off of Facebook back. You know, you're now it's starting to sound like you don't have a sense of humor, dude.
Oh, man, I got a sense of humor. Don't you worry about that. There was something I heard
Now
on the radio last night on Mark Levin, though, that took it away, and I can't confirm it, and I want to pass it on to you.
Okay.
You probably got more time doing this stuff. Mark Levin reported last night, if I heard him correctly, and I bounced this off LG this morning too, and he didn't seem as if he'd heard of it. Did Barack Obama expand the United States District Court, Circuit Court of Appeals during his administration, just prior to
Yeah.
getting his?
If I remember right, he added a couple different districts. Oh, I need to look that up.
I thought he, the way, well, listen, the way he being Levin characterized this is he added justices or judges to the Court of Appeals there in D.C., the second most
Yes.
prestigious court in the
Yes.
land.
If I remember something. I'll look this up, T-Rex. I remember something about this. Not only did he do that, he tried to add extra districts and to expand their authority. Right as he was going out the door, too.
According to Levin, he actually did add two judges, and I looked up their website a moment ago. There's something like 15 or 16 judges on it now.
Yeah, and it's done to make law and override law.
Oh yeah, I mean the only way around them is through the Supreme Court. I mean, if you get a verdict, they hand down a verdict on you or decide your case, you've probably got a 98% chance you're going to have to live with it. Considering most cases never get granted certiorari and heard by the Supreme Court. But
this is one of the reasons that I've been trying to explain to people. If we understood the framers' way of doing the government, you don't have to impeach a judge to get rid of them. All you got to do is, if you've got these judges on this court and they all rule in a way that is clearly unconstitutional, you just charge them with subversion. You go in there, grab them by the scuff of the neck, you take them out, you prosecute them, put them in jail. No, they're still the judge on the court. They can't do their job. They're in jail. They can't do their job. But how do you replace somebody who's been arrested and thrown in jail? You got to then go impeach them so that you can get the vacancy. There are ways to do this. We just won't do it.
Sure.
We won't do it.
You can just add two more.
You just add two
to
more.
Cover the vote of the one you don't like.
Exactly. It's all lawlessness.
What struck me about it is how quietly that happened. Because I'm kind of a news junkie. If you haven't,
I've caught that on. I've caught on to that.
And I don't recall this ever happening. And being a political science major in college, that kind of my area of concentration was the court and administrative law, as I've told you, much to your chagrin.
It's not a problem.
I can't believe that got by me. And
it's easy to get
Trump. Now, if Trump would have done something like that, he'd have danced on the goal line, spiked the ball, rubbed the other side's nose
come on,
in it.
T-Rex, let's think about this. Okay, you do this on your way out after the election's over, right before the inauguration. You're skulking out. You do all this crazy stuff because now the media is all hyped up about Trump stole the election. He took it from Hillary and blah, blah, blah. All anybody's looking at is that. Oh, shiny, look, over here. And they just sneak it in under the wire and the media never reports on it. So if one of the watchdog agencies doesn't catch it, none of us are going to know about it until well after the fact. And we find out when somebody says, hey, one conservative judge on that district court of appeals is going, where'd these two new guys come from? Because the one good judge has a clerk that squeals to somebody like Levin. And that's how you and I find out about it. And that's how our system works now. The media is no longer the fifth column. It is. It's not the fourth estate. It's the fifth column. The media works for the progressive deep state, whatever you want to call it. They're not the watchdog. They won't tell us what's going on. They don't care. So
they're the mouthpiece for them.
Right.
Which they do their dirty work.
And our founders even told us, we hate the media. They're the worst thing going, but they're essential to running a free society. They got to do their job. They don't do their job anymore, which is why I don't need your vote to get elected. I just need your support to keep the steal. So, the media keeps you thinking that I actually won. You won't go yelling for my ouster.
Well, I'm shocked by it. I hope next time I get a chance to talk to Sam Dennis, I'm going to ask him about it. Because what else is shocking, I did a quick dirty on it this morning before I left. I've been thinking about it all night.
Well, I wrote it down.
On my phone, and I couldn't pull up anything that confirmed or denied it.
Oh, if you can't find confirm or deny, very good indicator that it's true.
Oh, you know what the first thing was that pulled up on Google? Politico fact check. Was Obama stacking the court? And I just trim past all the silly explanations, come to the end of it, and Of course, they concluded no. So that makes me suspect that he did.
Yes. Folks, let me help translate that one. Political fact check. George Soros, did your puppet add extra judges on way out of house? No, puppet, no add extra judge, no. Okay, see everybody?
Okay.
George said his puppet didn't do it. That's what Politico fact check is. If you think I'm wrong, I can show you where to find all of the tracing back. Soros funds Politico, Mediaite, Snopes. He funds a lot of those places.
You don't have to tell me twice. I remember all the way back to George W. Bush. If I've told you this before,
he did bad things on his way out of office too.
Yeah, well, Google was doing bad things to him too, all the way back 20 years ago. You would type in his name and it pulled a page. Instead of pulling his presidential page, it pulled up.
Did we lose you? T-Rex?
That's how far back you can take Google. That's how far back they've been in the bag.
They silenced you, brother. You said when they didn't take you back to his presidential, they took you back to where?
They took you to a page that said failure.
Okay.
Definition of failure.
When you first tried to tell us that, your phone went dead for just total silence for a few seconds.
Oh, the hell with them.
I know. All bunch of coincidences, man, but I no longer believe in coincidence, especially when they're just always so perfectly timed.
No wonder. When I hear things like I heard last night, I mean, I was just stunned to hear Levin say that.
Wait.
And then,
when I started my show, you used to laugh at me as being a conspiracy theorist. What's happened to you, T-Rex? Do I accuse you of being a marshmallow dinosaur and you go soft on me or something?
Hey, I mean, that's just, I guess we all are to a certain degree. Yeah. I mean, living in this country, really? I told you the book to read, Burying the Boys. I can't recall the author's name right now. If you read that book and you believe it, then we're living in the Matrix. What that guy described, and I can tell you what struck me about that book is because I happen to know a few obscure facts in that book just because of where I live, some things that he mentioned that happened in the Washington, D.C. area that never broke on the national news that I know happened. And also a name he threw out that you don't hear a lot in history, Eugene Hassenfuss, if you know who he was and what he started in this country. He mentioned all of those things. So I tend to believe everything that was written in the book because of that. Connecting.
I haven't read that book. I'll go look for it. But the one that
I'm going to send you that on email. I want you to read that book.
Oh, I'd love
to. Because that book describes the corruption that's been going on. Well, it describes basically what you've described, and maybe you'll pick up on some things you've never heard. Or I think it would interest
that's how I do this.
I'm not a big reader for a librarian, but I love that book.
But the one I wish I could get everybody listening to me to read is None Dare Call It Treason, the 25th anniversary. Boy, if you've read that one, holy cow, you will never look at anything you see on the TV or hear in the news the same way ever again. You won't trust anything.
None Dare
Call It Treason. You want the 25th anniversary. It's a thick bit of a dry read because it's very well documented. Everything from public sourcing, nothing that's going to be hard for you to find and verify. Basically, it tells you Joseph McCarthy was correct. Skosin was correct with his, the planks of communism, the naked communist. Goes all the way back to the Korean War and brings you forward to everything our government has done. Exposes all of it. It is that and Tragedy and Hope by Carol Quigley. Man, that is a New and Old Testament of all the corruption in our government from the 20th century. It will just, you won't trust anything that you hear from the government or the media ever again. Nothing. And people wonder why I come off as being conspiratorial.
Anyway,
Yup,
like I told Steve yesterday, I'm just trying to figure out a way to retire and have a couple of years of peace.
Well, dude, it's easy to get retired. You were tired. You go to bed. You get a nap. You get up. You do something again. You're retired.
Yeah, I'll die with that pie in the sky notion in my head, probably.
Now, for what it's worth, before I let you go, I now no longer have the Stay Marshmallow Man in my head with reference to you. Now I've got, you've seen those T-Rex costumes that the people wear and they run around in them? Now I got a T-Rex Marshmallow Man in my head, thanks to you. So you've had your revenge.
All right, good.
All right.
May it burn there. May it burn often. Burn bright and burn often.
Have a good and safe weekend.
Jay, have a good one. Thanks for everything you do, brother.
That was fun. I like that. Got to be silly for a little bit. Yeah. Incidentally, some of the things I've read, and when I say fully documented, they'll tell, okay, well, this government, report here on this time and this time and this day and this page, fully documented. I go back and I say, well, I can't get the report, but I see it right there in the docket. But when I was researching that, it was before the internet times. So some of those reports from Tragedy and Hope, I mean, not Tragedy and Hope, from Neanderthal Trees, and some of that's probably still it's online now. It wasn't back when I was reading it. This was back in the early 90s, and this stuff wasn't all up on the internet yet. But I could look up in certain areas on my library. So, oh, there it is, right there in the government, Library of Congress. Well, if the guy's going to tell me what page to look on in that thing and what paragraph, very good chance that if I go there, that's exactly what it's going to say. Some of them I was able to look up in that book. And lo and behold, they were exactly what the author told me I was going to find, word for word. That book scared the bejeebers out of me because it was the blueprint for what we now call Agenda 2034, 2020, then 2021. They keep moving it because they can't get us locked down fast enough to make their world work. But it's the exact same plan. It tells you step for step how they were going to destroy the United States. Why is it that the United States has to be destroyed? Why can't we go after other countries? The answer is simple. No more United States, no more ideal of individual liberty. You just become an automaton and you do just like the little Chinese men do. Yes, massa. And I don't mean to make fun of them, but their culture is very subservient. Most Asian cultures have been trained to just mind your place. That's the culture they grow up in. Nothing to do with skin color, culture, ideology, the way they think, heavily influenced by their language and their traditions, and their cultures. But if you will look at them today, the fertile ground is being cultivated. The only place I've seen real mass demands for liberty in the last 20 years come out of China. So where if you think I was making fun of them just a second ago, no, I'm praising them as the only Americans left on the planet. America with a C. Most of the Americans in this nation here, this physical piece of property, we're Americans with a K. We follow Wilson. If you don't know what I mean by America with a C and a K, you're going to have a hard time looking that one up unless you actually have the hard book, because they've scrubbed that from the internet. You will find indirect references to it on Wikipedia. Do a search for that. America with a K, what does it mean? It was directly linked to a book about how we were going to have a communist America. But just so that you know, you've got a little group of people in this country that have set hell-bent for leather to do the same thing that the communists were doing. Only they don't want to raise a sickle and hammer over the White House. They want to raise a crescent and star. I'll let you figure that one out for yourself. So it's coming up on time to end the show. Monday, Manic Mondays, I'll have some stories for you and I'll answer Sharky's question. The stories will be related. Tuesday, we're going to talk about the Frankfurt School of Germany. Wednesday, Worship Wednesday, we're going to answer Mr. Ford's question, and then I'm going to yell at some of my Christian believers for bailing on me yesterday because I didn't want to listen to Dr. Evil. You should have. I think you missed what I was doing. I'm going to let you know about it. Next Thursday, I don't know, but next Wednesday, those legal means still available to us that we need to exhaust quickly. Convention of States is part of it. So, as always, I am very humbled and deeply appreciative of you being here, especially those of you that stay with me through all 2 hours. I love each and every one of you. I hope you'll all be back here. Have a good weekend. Hopefully you'll go to a church service. Be back here tomorrow. I mean, not tomorrow, Monday. Bright and early. Let's get at it. Stay safe.